Good afternoon. Yonopot. I'm here with Penny Nance today. She is the CEO and president of Concerned Women for America. It is the largest public policy organization in America that is also a women's organization. And Penny is a leader, a national authority in our country on culture, children, and on women's issues. So we want to talk today about the transgender movement. And in full disclosure, I was Vice President of International Affairs at Concerned Women for America during the Trump administration. And Penny, we were one of the very first organizations, maybe the first, to bring to Congress, to the American public, how influential the transgender movement was becoming. Right. We also uncovered the gender identity policies that were suppressing children's rights. How do you see that the transgender movement has changed in the past 7 years?
Well, it's just a deep honor for me to be here with you. I've enjoyed meeting people from Hungary. Yesterday, I got to meet your wonderful Prime Minister and just enjoy the time. And the more I'm here, the more I fall in love with Hungary. And so I send greetings to you from the nation's largest women's organization. Thank you. We are bold, Christian, feisty women. Does that translate? I don't know. Is there a Hungarian word for feisty? But I think we match your women, and so I would love to see a Concerned Women of Hungary someday, women who are boldly standing, and I know many of you are, and that's why we're here. I think we have so much in common, shared goals of protecting our children. You know, we're a uniquely policy and Christian women's organization in the United States. And there are many women's organizations in the United States. But we have over 1.5 million members who are standing firm on biblical principles. We recognize that when Psalm 139 says that God knit us together in our mother's womb, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. That principle is something that translates into every language and in every culture and in every nation. And so we recognize the right to life, that children in our womb deserve protection and that they have civil rights. And then also we recognize that God, the sovereign God of the universe who made us, did not make a mistake and put us in the wrong body.
And Penny, Hungarian fundamental law also recognizes these things, and especially the rights of parents to decide on the upbringing of their children.
Yes.
However, the EU has decided to sanction Hungary on these areas, particularly putting LGBT curriculum or sexual education curriculum into their schools. And our ambassador, the EU ambassador to Hungary, particularly antagonizes Hungary on this issue.
Yes.
How do you think the US should treat this?
Well, they should treat Hungary as a sovereign nation. And neither the US nor the EU should be wagging their finger at you because you've got it right. And so I wanted to say that I think that women are uniquely made for this moment. And in the United States, we talk about the Old Testament character of Esther, Queen Esther. This is your Esther moment. Messenger matters, and the women of Hungary are the ones that must stand up to this false ideology of that children do not matter, that children in the womb have no rights, and that God made a mistake in creating our little children. And so we stand with you. There are, hundreds of millions of women in the United States who recognize this principle. And unfortunately, our leadership at this time does not. But in 2024, that may be different. We hope.
Very good. That's very true. And actually, you get a lot of backlash for your stance. Recently, a Vanity Fair article misquoted you, twisted your words, for words that you spoke at CPAC in Washington, D.C. And I have a quote here that the writer wrote: "I am accustomed to the Penny Nances of America, the mothers, the fathers, obsessed by cultural paranoia." And I've seen this same sort of opposition narrative here in Hungary. What do you say to that? Are you culturally paranoid?
I wish we were. Right? I mean, we wish that we were completely wrong. By the way, does anybody here read Vanity Fair? Like, I don't know. It's kind of in the U.S. growing up, I always thought it'd be kind of cool to be in Vanity Fair. But of course, the time that I actually made it was not complimentary. Because it's, you know, like much of the media, it's very leftist. And the truth is, what happened in the United States is that we had COVID lockdowns for at least 2 years, in some cases longer. And during that time, our schools were forcibly closed. And then, you know, we had some governors in independent states that made different choices, I think notably in the state of Florida with Ron DeSantis, but many other states, in Virginia, where I live, the schools were closed. And so what happened was not the left's intention. Suddenly, school children were doing their lessons and listening to their teacher on their laptops in their kitchens at the table with their mothers. And what women were hearing was so devastating and so twisted that suddenly they woke up. So I'm glad I'm in a no-woke zone, because many homes in America suddenly created their own no-woke zone.
And
there was a backlash.
And at the same time, we actually had our Attorney General calling parents domestic terrorists who were going into school board meetings to just simply protect their children from transgenders in the school bathroom. So I want to...
So the backlash started, and suddenly there is this enormous movement to free up children, free up tax dollars to follow the children. You know, the U.S. educational system is like many bureaucracies. It's self-serving, and their teachers' unions don't want any change. So basically, the U.S. education system hasn't really changed much since the mid-19th century. And finally, parents woke up and said, I don't have to put up with this. And so we have about, I think, 6 or 7 states already that have now delinked the tax dollars from the public school system and saying, okay, parents, you can decide whether you want your child to attend a Christian school, a Catholic school, a Jewish day school, a different public school that's not in your zip code. I think you all have more flexibility here than we have in many states. And so it is very important that parents guide the education for their children, because we're the ones that love them the most. The educational bureaucrats do not know your children's name. And it is your job and my job to stand on truth and stand on principle and protect our children from those who do not wish them well. Although maybe in their minds, in a certain twisted way, they think that they do. But they certainly don't. Their idea of helping children in gender ideology in the United States is to introduce into the school system in kindergarten the question of, I know you think you're a girl or a boy, but maybe you're wrong. And so maybe you need to think about that, introducing confusion that did not exist and hiding things from the parents.
And Penny, the thing that I have been struck by, though, in the U.S. is that it really wasn't, I was asked this question, how have the Republicans helped the children in the schools against the transgender? And I said, you know, it really hasn't been the Republicans until recently. It was the parents standing up that really started the movement. But let's go to Congress for a moment in the U.S., because there are similarities here. Marjorie Taylor Greene has introduced the Protect Children's Innocence Act, and it will actually make it a felony to perform so-called gender-affirming surgery or care on a child. I love those words, care, it's care. It also prevents our taxes from being used on it. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, as you do, says that we have the responsibility to protect our children. And Hungary has also come out to say in the EU, they have the responsibility to protect children. So in the future, what do you think? Do you see Europe actually supporting or even emulating this?
Wouldn't that be great? I don't have a magic wand, though. I'm sorry. I don't know how you get there. But I will say that I know that Great Britain is a little bit ahead of us on this. I mean, the whole sort of gender theory took root about 3 or 4 years earlier than us. So suddenly they're starting to come out of it because large numbers of people are detransitioning. And telling the story of what cross-sex hormones did to their bodies. When it was supposed to be a pause, when puberty blockers were just supposed to be a pause, unfortunately made them sterile, and these kids are never going to be the same. So suddenly people are having to rethink, you know, what was supposed to just be helpful is actually hurting. In the United States, we have bicameral legislative body. And the Republicans control the House and the Democrats control the Senate right now. And of course, we have a Democrat president. So her legislation at this moment can't go anywhere. But we are seeing in the states similar things happen. And we're going to see as we get into the presidential cycle, these questions are going to come up and they're going to be front and center. And at least one person who's thrown his hat into the ring, Asa Hutchinson, I don't think he was quite caught up. I think he's a good guy, but he made a very important mistake. He actually vetoed a bill that would have done that. He passed a bill that one of the other sort of tension points is women's sports. The idea that a young woman throughout her career has worked, her mother got up at old dark 30 and drove her to the pool or to the track. She worked so hard and then suddenly, you know, she gets in high school or college and she's having to compete against biological men who are bigger, have bigger hearts, bigger lungs, better oxygenated blood, and shockingly, they're not doing well. They're losing their trophies, they're losing their scholarship, they're losing their places. And so again, Concerned Women for America has filed civil suits against them against the Department of Education, saying this is not fair, this is not what Title IX, which is the law that governs women's ability to have equality in education. This is not what it was meant to do. So we're having to fight so hard. And so we're recognizing, you know, in some states we're having, you know, great impact. Again, I would, you know, mention Florida, but other southern states as well are doing a great job. But, you know, when you're a governor and you make the wrong decision, you're going to have to answer for it. And it's actually not working out well. That is a bipartisan issue, by the way. And
I want to ask you, too, about family policy. We were talking earlier, Hungary really supports childbearing. They give subsidies to help women who want to get married and want to have children. And we've seen now that these subsidies are, you know, having the abortion rate. I think they're about 40% or 50% reduction. More people are getting married. Do you see the United States ever doing anything like that? Would it work? What do you think about that?
You know, I don't know. I mean, we may be learning from you because certainly from our perspective, we want to protect children and we want to protect families. We're not at replacement rate in the United States for babies. So we're behind you in thinking that through. But, you know, we have just in our country overturned a long-standing, almost 50 years, actually it was a court decision called Roe v. Wade. And suddenly it freed up the states to think about what is the policy, what should the policy be on abortion. And it really made all of us think, okay, what can we do besides prohibitions? And I support those. We're starting to see heartbeat laws that are being passed in the states, and we support those. But what else can we do? Because what you're showing is incentives to help people do the right thing, help women not be afraid to move forward with their pregnancy. Certainly financial reasons do come to play.
And there are more marriages also as a result. The population decline is getting better. And so they work. So it's something I think we should at least look at.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot to think about there as we have to consider the reality of where we are as a nation. Again, not meeting replacement rate for our population. I mean, a long time ago in the 70s, really before our time, the hippies were all worried about like overpopulation. Now we're worried about underpopulation, which shows no one has it figured out for sure. But, you know, my point was going to be these incentives are really important, because you don't want to just only have prohibitions. You really want to make the decision not just about, you know, financial means. You want them to feel confident. So one of the things that Concerned Women for America did is we're working on something that I called life.gov. In the Senate and House, it's introduced into legislation. It's called Standing with Moms Act. We realized that there are so many resources. I mean, we spend over $1 trillion in the United States on social welfare programs. In the state of Texas, they just passed $100 million worth of alternatives for abortion, again, to help moms that are struggling and dads that are struggling. And so I talked to the person who actually, you know, was the sponsor of the bill, and I said, his name's Brian Hughes, and I said, Brian, where did all that money go? And he said, I don't know. It's working. We're seeing, you know, the numbers go down. And I said, well, wouldn't it be great if we just had one place, life.gov? Because in a world with, you know, online world, why don't we know where all the resources are? Why can a woman in the United States and perhaps the world not be able to put in her zip code or whatever and know what all the resources are that are available to her? Educational grants, housing, health care, adoption resources, foster care, whatever it is job training, whatever it is she needs. There's a lot available, and we know because we've looked.
Penny, and this is why you are one of the very top pro-life leaders in America. I literally have 20 seconds. I have enjoyed our discussion. What would you like to leave Hungary with today?
To the women in the room, and we love men, by the way. We're the women's group who love men. Let me just say to the women in the room, you are the Esthers of this moment. If I could pass anything on to you from your Christian sisters in the United States, it maybe would be the words of Ronald Reagan. I was just in Liberty Square yesterday looking at that beautiful statue. And President Reagan, who is certainly one of our favorites, said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same.
Amen.
Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, or maybe Hungary, when men were free.
And nobody knows that better, I think, than
that
Hungary.
100%.
So thank you all very much. Thank you, Penny.